Welcome to this orientation to the role of membership on the National Council of the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace, sometimes known as CCODP or simply DNP. My name is Ray Temmerman. I come to you as a former member of the National Council and as president of the organization in 2015. I want to take a few minutes to talk with you about the ground for the work of DNP, a ground which drives all we do as National Council in ensuring the mission of the organization is fulfilled. As you know, DNP was established in 1967 by the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops as the Church's official international development agency. That's 53 years in service to the gospel, the teachings of the Catholic Church, and people living in poverty. We know from our Catholic faith and our own experience that all human life is sacred, from conception to natural death. We know, too, that being made in the image and likeness of God, all women and men are created with unique dignity. That's foundational, forming key principles by which we live. Centered in human dignity, we work for integral human development, of which openness to life in all its stages is at the center. In this, we cannot fail to consider the effects on people's lives of environmental degradation, current models of development, and the throwaway culture. As the Canadian arm of the worldwide Caritas Internationalis, and working with our bishops, with members across the country, and with partners around the world, we seek a world where the voices of the poor are heard and acted upon. This is a world where women and men in the poorest and most disadvantaged communities are able to influence the systems, resources, and decisions that affect them, so that they can live under governments, institutions, and global structures that are just and accountable. In the encyclical Deus Caritas Est, Pope Benedict XVI said, quote, "Individuals who care for those in need must first be professionally competent. They should be properly trained in what to do and how to do it, and committed to continuing care." End quote. This orientation is part of that training, so that you may effectively carry out your role and responsibility as a member of the National Council, the governing body of development and peace. So, who are we as National Council? Well, in a sense, we are shapeshifters. What do I mean by that? Each of us comes here as a passionate activist, deeply committed to the work of DNP in our parishes and at diocesan levels. Having demonstrated that passion and commitment, our fellow members have elected us to be national members, representing our region to the best of our ability. And so we come together to do the things that national members do. You will learn more about that later, but in a nutshell, the task and responsibility of the annual meeting of national members, AMNM, which takes place in November each year, is threefold. The AMNM receives the auditor's report and financial statements of the organization. Then it appoints an auditor until the next annual meeting. And finally, it elects the members of the National Council, the body that is tasked with actually governing the organization. In carrying out these three responsibilities, the national members are representative of their region. It is in the task of electing the members of the National Council that a key and sometimes confusing process takes place. The practice, for many years now, almost a knee-jerk action, has been that the annual meeting of national members elects each and every one of the national members to serve as members of the National Council, which is a separate body. There's no requirement that it be done that way. The bylaws allow for the board of D&P to have not fewer than 12 and not more than 21 members on it. And those board members don't even all have to be national members. They could be local members with a particular needed skill set or competency, for example. What is key is that we, as national members, ensure that the board, the National Council, has within it the people with the appropriate competencies to effectively guide the organization in its mission. Yet in practice, we have, without any consideration for the needs of the organization, elected all national members to be on the National Council. The difference in approach is something we need to consider going forward. That is because, following an organizational review carried out by Deloitte, a decision has been made to move forward with 15 members on National Council, of which 11 will be lay members elected by the national members, and 4 bishops elected by the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. Depending on the model chosen for selection of National Council members, it may even mean that, finding no one within the national members with a particular skill or competency that we need in this or that area, those national members draw on local members from somewhere who have that skill and competency, and appoint those persons to the National Council, the governing board of the organization. Regardless of our approach to the process, it is here that the shape-shifting of which I spoke takes place. From the moment the annual meeting of national members elects you as members of the National Council, you no longer represent your region, nor does anyone presently on the National Council represent the region they come from. You are still from the region in which you live, but you are no longer representative of your region. What does that mean for how we are to live and conduct ourselves? While you will undoubtedly bring with you the voices and experiences of people in your regions as a contribution to determining what is the best course of action for the organization, your task now is not to represent the region from which you come, but to represent the organization on whose governing body you now sit. From personal experience, I can tell you that this can be a difficult thing to grasp, and an even more difficult thing to put into practice. After all, it seems the most natural thing in the world to continue to work closely with our local animator, to drop in and chat with staff, learning what they're doing, what their needs are, etc. It can also seem the most natural thing in the world to sit on operational committees, being close to the pulse of the organization in its day-to-day work. It is, after all, exciting to be that close to the action. And yet, it is essential that we take off our activist regional representation hat and put on and begin to wear our organizational governance hat. Our role is not to care for staff, though we clearly want staff to be cared for. Nor is it to determine what particular projects should be implemented or how they should operate. Nor is it even to sit on an operational committee, interesting though that might be, and especially when we can bring significant relevant competencies to those committees. Our role is none of those things, though we may well find ourselves tempted to fall back into one or other of those, often without even thinking about it. Our role now is to determine the strategic plan of the organization, to ensure the funding for that plan, to determine policies to maintain the well-being of the organization in carrying out its mission, to provide direction to the one employee we directly hire, the executive director, and then to monitor and ensure that the plan and corresponding policies are appropriately implemented. As I say, again speaking from personal experience, this can be a difficult thing to grasp and an even more difficult thing to live by. Yet it is essential to the effective governance and successful operation of the organization in service to the gospel. Where does that leave us? We have now looked at the underlying ground of the life of development and peace and the National Council. We have looked at part of the role of the national members and their part in electing the members of the National Council. And we have looked at a very key component, that of moving from the role of representing our regions to that of representing the organization, with all the discerning, determining, and directing work this entails. If you are able to sort this out in your mind and implement the shape-shifting that this entails, you will already have moved significantly forward in serving the organization in the fulfillment of its mission.